I did Freud's dream theory. So before I go into his specific dream theory and the book he published, I'm going to briefly touch on pre-Freud's dream theories because he touches on them and it's important to know why his was so important. So Aristotle was one of those in history that had a theory on dreams. He involved the movements of sensory organs as a reason that we dream, so like indigestion. He also kind of concluded that dreams don't really have a purpose, they just happen because of our physical body. The Greeks and the Romans had a more divine sense of dreams. They had dream oracles, and they thought dreams had a purpose, but it was more that they predicted future events or they just retold past/present events. This comes from Freud's book on dreams, and so he touches on previous theories of dreams, materials, and sources. So everything in a dream comes from experience. People believed that childhood was important, and I'll go into a little more detail about these as well because he explains what he agrees with them. He brings up that nothing is ever truly forgotten, so that everything that we dream, you might not think, oh, that didn't happen to me, but he argues that you might just forgot it happened. And he gives 4 categories, so external sensory stimuli, internal sensory stimuli, internal physical stimuli, and psychic sources, which is what Freud focuses on the most. So Freud's dream theory. In 1899, he published The Interpretation of Dreams, and this was his first major book published. So he argues that dreams are wish fulfillers, and every dream fulfills some type of wish. So he uses his own dreams as examples throughout the book, and he realizes that might be a little biased, but he argues that he has no way around it because he can't necessarily ask for other people's complete dreams and to analyze them himself. So an example of this is he uses a dream that he calls Dream of Irma's Injection, which is about he dreams like one of his patients comes to him very sick, and then this doctor injects her with something, and when he interprets it and analyzes it, he's like, oh, I saw her recently and I just met with a doctor. So he, throughout the book, uses all of his dreams as his primary source of examples. He also really emphasizes that children's dreams are important, and he uses his daughter's dreams as an example for this. So one time his daughter was sick, she couldn't eat all day because she was throwing up, and in the middle of the night she woke up screaming strawberries, but not just one term for strawberry, 2. So he argued that she was dreaming of strawberries because she couldn't eat them all day. He also comes up with 2 types of content, Latent and manifest. So Latent content is what he focuses on. It's that symbolic content, the stuff that's hidden under the manifest content, and that the manifest content is the surface level, so when you wake up and you remember your dream, you're remembering the manifest content. And if it doesn't make sense, it's because you're not remembering or connecting it to the latent content. So his ideas on dream material, he argues that the experience from the previous day is always in your dream. Might not seem like it, but there's always at least one connection to the day that you just had. And the childhood experience, he argues that kind of blends in with the day you just had. And it might not just be a whole memory from your childhood, just bits and pieces blending in with recent experiences or something that your mind is trying to tell you. He also kind of briefly touches on physical events like aches, pains, body sensations, but he kind of leans more towards the psychic and the not physical areas of dreams. And he argues dreams are not trivial because the mind chooses specifically what they want, what it wants you to dream about, and it's not necessarily just random and just for fun. There's always a meaning, you just have to find that through dream interpretation. And dream interpretation is discovering the connection between that latent content and the manifest content. So he goes through a couple of steps and he explains previous theories. But so condensation, one image that you might dream of will mean maybe more than one thing. Displacement, importance shifts from one idea to another throughout your dream, or if you dream about the same thing more than one night in a row, that importance might shift. Means of representation, the considerations of representability. Everything is represented by an image. So that everything you dream about means something, and everything that you need to dream about is going to be represented by an image. The representation by symbols is that kind of goes back to that Latin content. Everything is symbolic. And secondary revision, If you want to fill in the gaps of manifest content, that's how you make your dreams make more sense. So you might dream about two completely random things. Freud would argue there's a connection between those, you just have to find it. This is one of the iconic quotes from his book. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind, because we all know he's a big unconscious man. So, what did this book bring to the field? It blended scientific thinking of the mind. Previously, it happened, but it wasn't as prominent until Freud published this book. And before, it was kind of the mind was seen as the spiritual world and the brain was seen as this physical world. So it kind of blended those two ideas together. And it was the first scientific theory on dreams. So I previously mentioned there are plenty of theories on dreams from Aristotle, the Greeks, the Romans, other philosophers, but they were all more divine and not necessarily looking at the scientific areas of the brain. And so Freud argued we dream for a reason. That was new, and he did not mention the divine origin or God or any of that. So a couple of post-Freud dream theories. REM sleep is a big one. So Eugene Oskarinsky discovered rapid eye movement sleep in September 1953. He was not a fan of the Freud theory. He had little patience for it. He argued as if REM sleep was the third state of being, and this kind of shifted the study of dreaming from the dreaming person to the dreaming brain. And there is still current disagreement between the relationship between REM sleep and why we dream. It's all up in the air as to 100% why we dream. And then two other ones, activation synthesis hypothesis. So dreams don't mean anything. They're just electrical impulses in your brain. And then threat simulation hypothesis, which was kind of created after scientists discovered that other mammals might dream. So then they argued that maybe it was a defense mechanism that we use to prepare for the next day or go over what just happened. Is it?
Questions?
Questions?
Okay, I have a question. You mentioned that this was Freud's was the first scientific dream theory. What makes Freud's more scientific than the stuff that came previous? Because I think some people would argue that his theory actually isn't scientific at all.
So what I took it as being scientific is that it looked past kind of the divine nature of dreams and focusing on religion, and it looked at, he used his own dreams, so you can't say experimental, but he did use experiments and his own methods of interpreting dreams. It wasn't kind of just random. He came up with this method. So while it's not necessarily scientific, discovering REM sleep through, sleep studies and stuff like that, it was something that could be repeated by other psychologists or people studying the dreams, and it didn't just kind of blame it on something in the sky.
I'm just going to keep asking questions. What did you see anything about how the lay people responded to his theory about dreams? The scientific community was maybe separated, but how did General Joe on the street think about this?
I did not see anything on that. I did not, come across. I just found more on scientific or the impact it had on the field. I know today we still don't necessarily know what dreams are, and it intrigues a lot of people, but I'm not sure on